So I studied in Cusco, Peru with IPSL and IPSL, their partner school. I had a pretty rough arrival in Cusco. I missed my flight out of Lima to Cusco. It happens a lot. The weather can be pretty unpredictable in that area, and it can cause flights to be delayed, canceled, all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of stressful after a really long flight, but you know, you just gotta go to the ticket counter and you gotta work it out, and you gotta not stress about it because you will eventually get there. You'll get in contact with the people that you need to get in contact with, and it ended up working out fine. I only was delayed by about 3 hours and I still got there the same day. I did let my parents know, I let IPSL know, but it's important to remember that my parents couldn't do anything from the States. It was on me, and IPSL couldn't do anything. It was on me to get my flight and get there and get where I needed to go. So it's no use stressing about it. It was pretty difficult being in a completely different place than the US. Peru is not like the US at all. It's totally different, but it was also really exciting. I was on an adventure. I was on experience that would allow me to grow as a person and as an individual. And I was more than anything just really excited about what was going to happen next, because you just never know. It's an adventure. That's what you're on. You get there, you have all these lofty expectations of how it's going to be, and it's not going to be anything like what you expect. And then you're really disappointed. And that's a surefire way to ruin your experience and really not get good stuff out of it. Despite not having any expectations, I did have some subconscious expectations, which are just gonna happen. And when I was being picked up at the airport in Cusco, and I had just gotten off the flight and dealt with trying to get another flight, and was exhausted and stressed and tired and in a totally different place where I didn't know the language, and I was driving through in the passenger seat of this car, driving to my host family's house. I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? This looks like a third world country or a developing nation. I've had experiences in developing nations, really good ones, but I had not wanted that again. But I told myself, I have to just put that aside. You know, it's probably not as developing nation-y as you expect, and that's just your first impression. You've been in the country all of 5 minutes. You can put that aside, and if eventually you come to that conclusion that this isn't working, then that's the conclusion you come to, but you need to give it time, and you need to really allow yourself to fully experience things and not just jump on the first feeling and experience that you have. That's not what it's really gonna be like. So I just kind of gave myself this pep talk as I was driving down, and it ended up being really great. So because I didn't know what to expect with my life in regards to the next few months, I really worked on just kind of being very flexible, and I kind of came to the conclusion that when you travel and when you're experiencing new things and when you're on an adventure, you really need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that line has been playing out through the rest of my life since that experience and since I kind of came to that conclusion, because it allows you to have a much better appreciation of what's going on. It allows you to enjoy where you are in the moment. And it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be like the States. It's going to be totally and completely uncomfortable. And you're just going to have to be okay with that. And when you're okay with it, you actually get to see the really exciting things that make the experience great and help you grow. So I actually found the whole experience of not knowing how my life was going to be like freeing. It was very freeing. I didn't have any expectations. I was teaching myself how to be comfortable with being in these new situations, and I was becoming more flexible as a human being and happier because of it. Because when you don't have expectations, when you're not stressing and worrying about every little thing, you end up being able to enjoy so much more. That being said, it was a difficult experience at times, just like travel always is. And I have developed over the course, starting in Cusco and over the course of my subsequent travels, I've kind of developed a way to cope with those difficulties, which I actually think is very useful and could help a lot of people that are experiencing homesickness, that are experiencing frustration or difficulties, that this is not what they wanted. And really the best way I've found is to simply go out and walk in the neighborhoods and just wander around. Buy yourself a city map and go down little side streets. Don't go to the touristy areas, just wander. Take the route less traveled by the tourists and by a lot of people, and just kind of find your way. You'll find really amazing places, amazing restaurants, amazing cafes and shops, weird little bookstores or churches or altars, and it's exciting. It's a good way to get to know the community that you're living in. It's a good way to experience the country in a way that no other foreigners really get to experience. And it's a way to help you get out there and get moving and appreciate the little things and find the things that make you happy. So a lot of those places that I found on those walks were places that I went to again and again, especially if I was feeling really homesick, because they ended up being really comfortable places to be. I would kind of take myself out of the group, which is, a group of foreigners, especially if there's drama going on or something like that. And I would go to this little cafe and I would just sit and I'd order a coffee and I would read a book, or I'd stare out the window and look at all the regular people passing by. And it's a really good way to just feel connected to a larger community. I personally feel like homestays are an incredibly important part of the traveling, studying abroad experience. It is a way to integrate yourself into a culture that you otherwise would not be able to integrate yourself into as well. My homestay family in Cusco was incredible. My host mom became a second mom for me. They had 2 small children. It felt like I had a safety net there when otherwise I would have just been on my own. I was nervous meeting them. It's definitely a transition. It is nerve-wracking and scary. They don't know you, you don't know them. It's kind of a whirlwind experience. You meet them right off the bat. And it can be very nerve-wracking. They don't speak the same language as you, but I just had to keep reminding myself that they don't know anything about me either, and they're just as nervous and scared about what I'm gonna be like and how I'm gonna fit into their family as I am nervous and scared how I'm gonna fit into their family. So it's an important piece to remember that it's okay to be nervous and scared about homestays. You're coming to live with strangers, which is a pretty big thing. But ultimately, it can be this incredible experience where you end up getting a second family that you still keep in contact with years later and down the road. So I really enjoyed the food there. It was pretty delicious and amazing, but that's not always the case when you're traveling, and there were definitely dishes that I was not a huge fan of. I remember my host mom really loved to make papaya milk, and I hated papayas. I think they're so gross. But I just let her know that they weren't my favorite thing. I didn't tell her I hated them. I didn't, tell her to stop making them. I just told her, these aren't the greatest. She still made them anyways. I just didn't drink it. It was okay. It worked out fine. Then there were some dishes that I really, really loved. And I found that when I told my host parents that I really loved these dishes, that I just thought they were so amazing and delicious, that they ended up making them for me a lot more, and they'd make me a little extra so I could have some the next day. And they enjoyed making these dishes for me because I knew I really appreciated them. So I've found that instead of being negative and not really eating the food offered to you if you don't like it, or saying I really don't like this, it's better in the long run to say what you do like, what dishes are really delicious, what ones are your favorite, and telling them that will help them be able to be able to accommodate you and your dietary needs, because they want to make sure that you're comfortable, and they want to make sure that you are enjoying your food and enjoying your time there. Obviously, they're not going to change their diet for me. Like I said, my host mom still made papaya milk. I just didn't drink it. But they do want to help you, and they want you to feel comfortable. So telling them what you like, they're going to want to make it for you. It's a pretty good way to connect with your host parents and start an open dialogue with them. So I took Spanish for 8 years in the US before going to Cusco, and I found that despite having those 8 years under my belt, despite taking numerous Spanish tests and using flashcards and writing essays, I was in no way prepared for living in a country where the main language is not English. But that being said, it was one of those incredible experiences where now I feel so confident in Spanish and I consider it a second language. It's gonna feel really silly and awkward at first. I was so embarrassed to speak this horrible, broken, wrong Spanish in front of these people that were fluent. But I had to remind myself that they've been speaking Spanish their entire lives. Just like we're really good at English, they're really good at Spanish. And they're not so great at English, so they're kind of in the same boat. It's just with a different language. Oftentimes, parents in other countries really want their kids to learn English, so they're gonna make their kids practice with you, which is what happened with my host siblings. I helped them learn English, they helped me learn Spanish. And, they may poke fun at you and joke at you for saying something silly or wrong, but it's a sweet kind of poking fun. They're not maliciously making fun of you. They don't think you're stupid. They know it's hard. At first, it can feel isolating, all the Spanish all the time, no English. You don't really understand everything that's going on. You can't express yourself the way you want to. And it can be very isolating. But, it really just takes that patience and that time to get to that point where you will understand what's going on. You will be able to express yourself, because that will happen. When you have to speak it every day, you're forced to speak it every day, you're forced to listen to it, it will happen. Another thing that really helps when you're speaking a foreign language, or when you're in a foreign country where you're required to speak a foreign language, is to smile a lot, laugh at yourself, and use hand signals. That probably saved my life in the first few weeks. Just trying to get by, pointing at things, asking them what the word for this was, and then committing it to memory. That's a really good way to make sure that they appreciate you for you attempting to speak their language, and it's a good way to really start learning things and learning the words for things. The last thing I want to mention in regards to education systems over there is that you have to remember you're not there to change their education system. It is set in stone, unfortunately, but also you have to understand that sure, they run things differently, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. So just remember to get what you can out of the classes, do the best you can in the classes, but remember you're not there for just this one kind of education. You're there for this experiential education, which is education that gets you out in the community, gets you to see the relationships between, the culture and the people and the history, and an education that really you wouldn't be able to get back in the US. The classes are an important part, and it's important to do well in them, but they're not everything, and you shouldn't try to change them while you're there. It's actually really hard for me to remember some of the major cultural conflicts or things that happened while I was there, because it was mostly just very many little things on a daily basis. You're gonna remember those times where you connected with your host family, you connected with the culture, you connected with the country, you connected with the city. Those are the times you're gonna remember. So I feel like I had a pretty unique experience with the service placement. It's not something foreigners often get to do in another country, and it really allows you to connect to the community in a way that not many other people get to experience. I personally feel like my service placement changed my life. Oftentimes service can be very disappointing. You can expect to make these great, amazing changes in the community and the situation that you're in, and that doesn't happen, and it can be very disappointing. But for me, I actually got more out of the service placement than I put into it, because it eventually led me on the path that I am today, and it really helped me focus my career and what I was passionate about in life. In the end, you gotta remember that oftentimes service, while it does help out the immediate needs of community, really actually changes you and helps you out more times than not. For me, it helped me focus my goals and my passions, but I was able to make connections. I was able to make connections with locals. I was able to make connections between locals and foreigners. I worked in an animal sanctuary for my service placement, and I gave tours to foreigners in English. And because of that, I was able to raise awareness for endangered species, and something that I really would not have gotten to do anywhere else. What was amazing about this experience of just raising awareness and giving tours was that I was able to help people connect with a culture that I come to love and feel like was maybe not necessarily my own, but an adopted culture. And I was able to raise awareness for the things that I was really passionate about in that culture through my service placement. Yes, we built rock walls, and we cleaned animal cages, and we fixed fences, which in the long run probably doesn't mean very much. But to me, I feel like being able to show people just a little snippet of this country that I'm getting to experience was more than enough impact than I could have ever hoped for. Another really important thing that I learned about service while I was there was that I didn't really get to do what I wanted to do. I was getting to do, I ultimately think, what I really needed, because it helped me grow as a human. It helped me focus and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And it was really driven by what they needed. And ultimately, you're only there for a short time, so what they need is going to be the deciding factor in whether or not you make an impact, or whether or not you help them, and whether or not you create a lasting bond and relationship between yourself and your organization. So, like any normal person, of course I was homesick while I was there. It doesn't matter how many times you travel, or where you've traveled, or how long you've been gone. Homesickness will find you wherever you are, and that's just inevitable. The important thing is learning how to deal with it and not get bogged down in it and not allow it to ruin your experience. I relied a lot on my host family. I developed a very close connection with them, and I found that they were really open and willing to help me and help me deal with my adjustment to the culture, help me deal with my time there and the issues that I may have had surrounding some of the culture shocks and the cultural differences. And they wanted to make me comfortable. So I was able to create a really good relationship with them, as well as have a really good support system because of investing time in that relationship. I also found that trying to limit the contact you have back home is a really important part of fully immersing yourself in the culture, fully feeling comfortable in the culture, and creating connections with new people. If you're just plugged in, logged in, constantly thinking about home, homesickness will overtake you. It will bog you down, and it will prevent you from having a really amazing experience. I found that checking in with my parents once a week by email was a really good way to manage homesickness, as well as keep everyone informed of how I'm doing. And it allowed me to then disconnect and enter the culture that I was living in, instead of trying to drag myself back to a culture that I was no longer in. Before you know it, you're gonna be home anyways. So it's really important to remember that where you are in this moment is really exciting and really amazing. And while it's great to think about home, you're eventually gonna be there anyways, so why don't you just wait and hold off on that? Contacting my parents once a week and limiting my Skype time so I didn't really see them or hear their voice was a really great way to make sure that I enjoyed every moment of my experience. It often just makes you more homesick, and it makes your parents stressed in a way that's probably not really great for them. So I found that really focusing on learning to deal with the problems that I was encountering by myself, relying on the support of the people there, your friends, your host family to solve these problems with you was a great way to develop skills that I have been using since I left. I now know that when I'm in a sticky situation, I can rely on myself, which is a really amazing feeling. Just like anytime you get a group of really awesome, really passionate, exciting people together, you're gonna have conflicts. That, of course, did happen in my IPSL group, even despite the fact that we were all really good friends and we really enjoyed each other's company. You're going through a very stressful, intense experience, so issues are gonna arise. The best way that I found to deal with those issues was to take a break from the group. Maybe hang out with your host family instead for a little while, or just go off on your own and explore, give yourself some alone time and rejuvenation time. Another thing that I found was really helpful was to never speak for the group. Everyone's going through their own experience. While it may seem that everyone's feeling the same way or doing the same thing or dealing with all the new things that are happening in the same way, they're not. So it's really important just to speak to you for yourself and how you feel, rather than speaking for the group as a whole. This will cut down on conflicts, drama, issues, tension, hurt feelings, and other difficult things that you have to do on top of dealing with being in another culture, another city, and another language. By the time I left Cusco, I felt like my host family was a second family. My host mom was a second mom. I'm still in contact with them today, and I love being able to watch from abroad, being able to see my host siblings get older and grow up and graduate college and all those exciting things. And I still feel a very strong connection to them. This is one of those amazing aspects of studying abroad and living abroad, is you get to create those connections, you get to maintain those relationships. They have seen you in your life at a very vulnerable point when you're in a new culture and you're in a new situation. And some really intense feelings can develop because of that. So it's nice to be able to talk with them and speak with them and check in with them and see how they're doing years later, and see how you've grown as compared to that person that you were when you were studying abroad and to now. Something that I really didn't expect when I decided to study abroad was the fact that this experience didn't end when I left Cusco. It keeps unfolding, it keeps happening. The repercussions of what I've learned there, who I had become while I was there, the experience I've had there in Cusco on the study abroad program are continuing to unfold in my life now 4 years later. I am on a completely different track with my professional degree. I have continued to travel, and I've continued to find that I'm constantly learning and growing because of it. The foundational skills that experience gave me to become flexible, to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, to learn how to create relationships across a language barrier, and really learn how to experience the city in a way that makes it feel more comfortable, have helped me immensely in my future travels and in my professional life, in my student life, and just personally as an individual. I think it's a little cliche to say this, but at the same time, being brave is a huge component of being successful in a program such as IPSL. Like I said, it's very difficult. It's very trying and challenging. And so you need to be able to trust yourself and believe in your abilities to get through difficult situations and stressful situations. It's really important to be flexible. Flexible in your actions, flexible in your responses to situations, flexible in your expectations, and flexible in your own emotions. Allowing that flexibility to come into your life will make you very successful on a program such as IPSL. I really found that the less I expected and the braver I was when it came to saying yes to new situations that I had no idea what I was getting myself into was a really surefire way to have a lot of fun and really fully enjoy my experience to the best of my abilities during my time there. You do always go home eventually, and it's important to remember that this is a really short period of time. And as such, really anyone can do anything for 4 months. The last thing I want to mention is remember that this is your experience, not your parents, not your schools, not your other friends. This is your experience. And as such, you need to take every moment of this opportunity and really love it to the most that you can, to the best of your abilities. It's going to be tough, but you have to remember that this is a really privileged experience that you're on. And to enjoy it to the best that you can is going to be life-changing. So my last piece of advice is to stop worrying about all the things that can go wrong and start dreaming about all the amazing things that can go right.